My father, who grew up in the Depression, hated spending money. My mother was 11 years younger, and she loved spending money. So the two of them used to fight bitterly about money. And so I grew up believing that money equaled conflict. We have a date that we're born and a date that we die. It's what happens in the dash. What does our life stand for? Did it matter that we were on this earth? If there was someone who came into my office who was rude to my employees, I fired him. Goodbye. Don't need your money.
All right, welcome to another edition of Living Boldly with Purpose. I'm Dr. B. I'm your host, and it's just, I get so excited when I get to do these podcasts because I get to talk to people that are doing stuff in life that just is enjoy. When we talk about living boldly with purpose or living with purpose, we finally get to the point, and for you and I, older in age, right, get to the point where we're doing things that we just love to do. We can't wait to wake up in the morning. We can't wait to do the things that we do during the day. And then probably by the evening time, I don't know about you, but by 9:30, 10 o'clock, my butt is like, oh, I'm done. My wife's like, no, let's stay up another few hours. I'm like, no.
I'm with you there. I am toast by around 9:30. So.
I don't know what it is. Now, if I have to stay up, if I'm doing somewhere with family or something, I'm good. But just on a normal day, no, there's no reason to, because I just did all these fun things during the day. I did all these wonderful things. Well, one of the things that I'm excited to talk about today, because you have a men's group, and so you've decided to work with men. I went to a seminar about almost 2 years ago. A guy named David Horsager has this thing called the Trusted Edge, and he talks about how we have to lead with trust and how important trust is, and all of our relationships, good or bad, deal with the type of trust that we have. You know, if it's a good trust, then we want to do something, or just trusting somebody. Like if somebody's late all the time, then I can trust them to be late, whether it's good or bad. I just know they're going to be late, so I trust that. Well, anyways, there's 400 or 500 people in the room. I look around the room as I do as a person of color, and I look for all the other people of color that are around the room. And there's like 30 of us, and I'm counting, and I say, well, this isn't important to me, but then I find myself counting, right? And so I know, it's got to have something to do with just, growing up in our culture and all that kind of stuff. So I come back and I say, this is such great information. I truly want, folks in my community and folks in my church and that kind of stuff to be able to experience and understand it and hear it, because we have trouble trusting ourselves. We have trouble trusting each other. We have trouble trusting other cultures. We have trouble trusting our women. I mean, we just have a trust issue. And so can we get into this? And so I came back and I was like, well, and I'm, definitely a spiritual guy. And I talked to God and I said, how do I do this? What am I going to do? And I just heard so much, well, I need you to work with men. And I'm like, well, I want you to work with Black men. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to work with Black men, Lord, because the Black men are I'm one of them. So I know how, I know what it's like in the barbershop. I know it's like where we go, and I know how stubborn we are, and all these things that come to my mind. I said, okay, after a couple more weeks of just wrestling with it, and, it's so much easier to talk to some of the women, that are at least, if they're people of color and they're women, or, that they got this nice, gentle spirit. And, I don't know what my conversations are going to be like with the men. But I say, okay. And I start interviewing, I call it Journey to Freedom. And we start talk about helping Black men get unstuck. All the things that we show up with, the chips that are on our shoulders, the things in community that we've had to deal with. All of us have, probably felt some kind of discrimination at some time or something like that. So, but some of us feel it still today. We're going, okay, so how do we get unstuck? How do I get successful Black men on a show to talk about their story and talk about the things that they do? And so as a result, I'm now at 175 episodes of that show with some incredible men that I've learned so much from. And whether some are famous, I've had some Super Bowl champions, I've had some NBA stars, I've had some, entertainment people, and then I've had our regular, everyday in the community guys that just get up every day and make a difference. And so it has been so phenomenal. So I can't wait after we hear your story to hear how you're working with men in particular. So I'm going to be a little bit selfish when that comes up, and just at least 5 minutes on that subject, if you're okay with that, of the things that you're doing there.
Hey, Brian, this is your show, man. Okay. So you're the conductor with the baton. I'm just sitting here in the orchestra. So
I love it. Love it. So would you kindly just start? I have all my guests start with their story. I can tell all my guests you can start at the womb to now. It seems like the older we get, the less we want to start at 2 or 3, because we don't even remember our teens hardly, so let alone, but it's like at 2 or 3. I just turned, just so you know, I just turned 60 in March. And so, you know, I'm the stuff hurts when I get up, but I'm more excited about life than I ever have been. So please tell us your story, and then we'll chop it up with all these other stuff afterwards.
Sounds good. I guess maybe the right place to start without, getting too crazy. I grew up in a family of professional musicians. My mother was a violinist. My father was a Juilliard trained bass player, although his primary occupation was a school teacher. But he was a club day musician on nights and weekends, and there was a second job.
Was he a band teacher?
No, he wasn't. He was a 6th grade teacher.
Okay,
so he,
gotcha.
And my uncle, who was actually maybe the most talented of the 3, was a trombonist. He was. Good story for you. He was the first white musician to be asked to play with Duke Ellington on the road. And my grandmother, this was, a little past the Depression. My grandmother said, "No, you're going to college." Wow. So he never had that opportunity, but he was a fine trombonist, and he became. And not only did he play, in some of the big bands and things like that, but he was also a band director. Here in New Jersey, he had a famous high school that he brought his band all over Europe competing against professional bands. And he was remarkable. But anyway, so I grew up in a house of music. I grew up listening to string quartets in the living room. I listened to my father had all the 78 recordings from when he was in World War II in the Army. Billie Holiday and Art Tatum and all the big bands. And so I grew up around music, and I was magnetized by it. And I started playing trumpet when I was pretty young, and became, I was classically trained. I worked with I was I think a freshman in high school, and he had 2 students, this guy who was with the New York Philharmonics. One was in Juilliard and I was the other one, and I was a freshman in high school, and he broke me to tears every week, literally, no joke. Okay. I mean, just, screaming, whatever, but I became a pretty good player. The PS to the story, and I've told the story probably too many times, and the person involved has heard me tell the story on WBGO radio when I did a guest DJ spot. BGO is the jazz station out of Newark, which broadcasts in New York and whatever. And so I was doing a guest DJ spot. But anyway, I decided I walked away from music when I was 18 years old, after hearing John Faddis play, a recording of John Faddis. And John Faddis, for those of you who are not jazz people, it was a protege of Dizzy Gillespie. Okay. And John and I are the same age. Mm-hmm. So we're both 71 years old, and John was remarkable. Okay. And I heard this recording, and I put my horn in the case. I said, "I'm wasting my time. I could never be this." Yeah. So, and I'll tell you the PS to the story was years later, in my career, in my second career, I was a financial planner, and John was actually a client of one of my employees who came to work with me. And 2 days after I did the guest DJ spot on BGO, John was due in the office, and I'd never met him. And I walked into the office in the morning, and there's John, and John's really tall, and John's really big.
Mhm.
And I see him standing there, and he looks at me, and I look up at him because I'm not very tall, and I look up at him in so many ways because he is a jazz god, and he said, "I heard you on BGO."
Oh, he heard the show.
Yeah.
Why
He says,
quit?
yeah. He says, "I heard you on BGO." He goes, "If you don't pick up that horn, I'm going to kick your ass." and I turned around and I leaned over. I said, "Kick away, John, because I can't. I just can't."
Wow.
So going back to history, I mean, it was just a great moment because it was like,
That
I
is
knew.
so cool that he actually, you got to say something and then he jumped. Now, when I think of like jazz guitarists, my favorite is Stanley Jordan as far as one of the most incredible. He can play two guitars at the same time. Is he kind of on that level? Is that what?
Oh, John is one of the premier jazz trumpet players of all time. I mean,
look him up.
You hear him play and you just want to cry. I mean, and scream and everything because he's just. I mean, he sat at Dizzy Gillespie's feet and learned from him, which is like, wow, and so
okay, cool.
So anyway, so when I decided to walk away from music, I had no idea what I wanted to do because it was the only thing that I really cared about. So my father, who I said was a sixth grade teacher, had a friend of his whose kids he had in his class. He goes, "Why don't you go talk to my friend Gordon? Maybe he can give you some ideas." And Gordon was an accountant. I didn't know what an accountant was. I didn't know what they did. I didn't care what they did. So I went over to talk to Gordon. So he says, we talk a little bit. He goes, "I think you'd be a good accountant." I became an accountant.
Wow. Just because somebody said you'd be good at it, right?
Yeah. I had no idea what it was. And I went to college and became an accountant and got my CPA license certificate and worked like a demon because it was crazy hard and crazy long hours. And, tax seasons were literally, an easy day was 16 hours.
Yeah.
And as I started to kind of move up the ladder, I had a dear friend of mine who I had met through my wife, and he had a financial services company. And the partners of the firm I was working with at the time had said, we're thinking of making you a partner, but you really need to bring in some more business. So I was having lunch with this guy who was a good friend, and he had been referring business to me, and I'd refer business to him, and I was telling him the story, and he goes, "Never mind that." He goes, "Why don't you come to work with me?"
Hey, it's Dr. B, and let me ask you something just here real quick. Are you tired of doing the same thing over and over and not getting the results you want? Are you serious about making some changes this year that will impact you in a huge way? Maybe you're putting out content right now and it's not turning into customers, or maybe you're uploading videos, but you're not sure why or how it's even gonna help. I've seen a lot of people that are making a whole bunch of cold calls to the wrong people, and no one's answering. No one wants to talk to you. It might just be that you're just doing what you've been doing and crossing your fingers, hoping it finally works this year. But let me tell you what, that is not a strategy, and it will continue not to work. That's why I created the Podcasting Challenge, and it's coming up fast. In just a few days, I'm going to walk you through the mindset, the tool set, and the skill set you need to create a powerful podcast. That's right, a podcast. You won't believe what a podcast can do. One that builds real value and creates new clients. And if you grab a VIP ticket, you'll get to join me for a daily Zoom Q&A sessions where I'll personally answer your questions and help you tailor everything to your goals. This is your moment. This is your year. Go to thepodcastingchallenge.com right now and save your seat. The link is in the show notes and the description. Thank you for watching these podcasts. Now let's get back to the conversation.
And, it was insurance, it was investments, it was planning. I knew nothing about it, but I trusted him. You talk about trust. I trusted him. And because I knew he deeply, deeply cared about the people he served. Mm-hmm. He wasn't some slick, guy who, wearing, $1,000 suits and driving. He was just a serious, caring human being who cared about widows and orphans and cared about people being able to have security. So I trusted him and I said, okay. Did I know anything about it? No, I knew about as much about financial services as I knew about accounting going in, but my body told me that was the right direction.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was with him for a bunch of years, but what I discovered was that I really suck at selling.
Oh,
I'm really bad at that. I'll do this for you. I'll do this planning for you if you buy this from me. So I kind of went back to the idea of, okay, how do I build a sustainable business that's not dependent on commissions? And I had some really good years and I had some super lean years. Mm-hmm. And I had two young children at the time. And I'm working nonstop. So I kind of moved out of his office. I opened up my own and I started to build a financial services business on my own. And I was a mess because I was trying to do everything. And I did
you can't do everything, right?
Right. Right. It's impossible. You can't look for business, create the plans, sell it, work with clients. You can't do it all. So I hired someone who helped me, get myself organized. I did some different coaching programs. And then I found a program where, it was an investment platform that was fee-based. And so it was repeatable, recurrent income. Every quarter, I got a check. And I said, okay, this is good. This makes sense. This takes the pressure off of the idea, because the idea in selling to me was, okay, you've got to continually find new blood. But what about the old blood? What about the other people who you sold 5 years ago? You don't have time to deal with them. So that whole thing just didn't work for me emotionally. So I started creating this idea around how I wanted to create a firm and an experience for clients. And then as I was on my journey, I found out about a company out in, it was then in a little place called Poolsbo, Washington, which is west of Seattle. You have to kind of take a
hard to be west of Seattle because Seattle's kind of on the ocean, right?
Right. It's actually on a peninsula.
Yeah,
you'd kind of have to drive up past Seattle and come all the way down to get there.
Okay.
Or take the little ferry across. Okay. So I'm sitting and it's this tiny little one-horse town that if you blink, you're through. Okay. It's that small. But it was this woman, her name is Carol Anderson, and Carol had created this platform based on the adult learning model of how you engage with people by asking really important questions, by really listening, by going to understanding people's money history. Like, why do they think, right? Why do they think the way they do about money? Well, that's how they grew up and it was normal, right?
Yeah.
So here I am sitting in this tiny house, in this tiny room, in this tiny house, in this tiny town, listening to this short little woman talk about life planning. And she was asking the questions about, why you think, how did you grow up around money? Things like that question. And I started to think about it. And we took a break and I walked a block away and there was the I don't know if it was the canal or the bay or whatever. It was beautiful. And I started to think about my own upbringing, and my father, who grew up in the Depression, hated spending money. I mean, it was like, you pry it away with you need a shotgun to get money out of him. My mother was 11 years younger and she loved spending money. So the two of them used to fight bitterly about money. And so I grew up believing that money equaled conflict. Right? All right. So some people, right?
Yeah.
So some people might grow up where money is a reward, or money is survival, or money is, to help others. Like everyone has a money message, and mine was money is conflict. And I thought about it in terms of my relationship with myself and with my wife. And anytime she would ask me about financial issues, I would deflect, I would defend, I would push it away, didn't want to talk about it. And it wasn't until that moment where I realized that my upbringing around money was so definitive in how I thought and how I felt and how I acted, and how that relates to everyone out there. Everyone has an experience around money.
They do. You're right.
And understanding that relationship, I can't tell you the number of conversations I'd had with clients over the years where they would break into tears. Just thinking about, like, for example, one of the big questions was, what was the first thing you bought with your own money? And invariably, everyone knows. Everyone knows exactly what it was and what it meant to them and what led up to that. So I then introduced, and this was what was called financial life planning. So this became kind of my mission, and I wound up creating a firm of multiple advisors in multiple locations of financial life planners. And I was blessed enough to, I sold my practice, my firm, to a younger partner a little over 4 years ago. This is my fourth year. And it was a huge part of my life. And since then, I was sitting with a friend who is also a very famous musician and music educator, and we were talking about music and everything. And he goes, "Why don't you play anymore?" And I said,
"John,
yeah, John was going to kick my ass." So because I had told him the story, and he actually is very good friends with John.
Okay, good.
And he said, "Well, can't you have fun with it?" And like, it never occurred to me, because it was always about being the best.
Yeah. Instead of just enjoying the music.
Yeah. So he kind of flipped the switch for me. And so after I retired, I started playing again, and I started taking lessons again, and I started playing with an adult big band again. And so that's become part of my life now. And while I was in transition of the retirement, I did some training as a certified life coach.
Okay.
And did several different training programs, Tiny Habits program, and the Human Potential Institute, and became a certified life coach. And I created what I call Chapter X, for men transitioning to life after career. And so what I do is I write 2 or 3 blog pieces a week. I do a monthly Zoom meeting where I limit it up to 15 or so people per month to come in and talk about anything they want to talk about, as long as it's not sports, it's not politics. It's about, and I don't care what's in their glass. I don't care if they're drinking wine, whiskey, or water. It's not part of the discussion. We want to talk about real things. We want to talk about legacy. We want to talk about what are some of the challenges of being in life when you're not working and finding your identity. So those are some of the things I do. I'm blessed. I have 2 grown children. My daughter, who lives very locally, has two daughters, and my son, who unfortunately is in Chicago, and he and his wife have 1 daughter who we don't unfortunately, because I want them with me all the time. Yes. All the time. There's so but we spend we go out there, they come in, and that's really important to us. Is I've got 3 granddaughters and 2 children, and I'm just, my wife and I are very, very blessed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Man, when you think about the kids, I have kind of the same issue, because, when I raised my children, we were in Southern California. I was doing the financial planning in 2008, and I came back to Denver, where I grew up. So I have 4 of my children who still live in California, and 4 of my children who live here in Colorado. Well, the ones that keep having all the kids are in
California, of
right?
course.
Of course. So we have 16 grandkids now, and
Wow.
3 of them are in Colorado. So that means 13 of them are in California. So we got lots of trips to California. But every week I do we call ourselves the A Tribe. Arnold's last name, we're the A Tribe. And so every week I try to find something to do. So right now I'm sending out a message to each of the kids about what their name is. Their name, if it was a tribal name, this is what it would mean. My grandma grew up on a Choctaw reservation so she's Choctaw, and I guess so am I, and so you go. So I kind of do that every week. And then we've done where I've done scavenger hunts. So I'll get a list of stuff, and we'll get on Zoom every month, and we'll do scavenger. My wife has an embroidery business, so we'll make, and she's an artist and that kind of stuff. So she took the A Tribe symbol that we came up with, and we made a puzzle out of it. So we had a speed race and then putting the puzzle together. So at least once a month, I'm trying to do something with all these kids and at least have that connection, because one of them's here now. When the ones that live in Colorado, they come over, one of them comes over every day, and the other 2 are in school or whatever, chess club or something like that. But yeah, I mean, that's life, right? That's why we do all the things that we do, so that we can spend. Oh man, thank you for bringing that up. That's just a reminder again. What I do want to ask you though is a couple of identity shifts in there. And now you're also an identity trainer and helping people with identity. And so I would love to kind of know, what were those shifts for you? Because the music thing, you grew up you got this identity of I am a musician. One person changes that identity just a little bit because you want to be the best. And you feel I can't. So if I can't be the best, the identity says I don't do it at all. And that's an interesting identity. And then hey, I don't want to work within somebody else's firm. I have an identity that I want to be doing it on my own. So that's kind of the best to me. And then now to where you're at now, where you're retired and still being that. Just maybe kind of walk me through some identity shifts with you.
Wow. I think what I've learned in terms of identity is the idea that for example, when I became an accountant, the idea was to become a certified public accountant, have those initials. So that's the identity. You work really, really hard to pass this ridiculous test over, 3 days of complete torture. And there's an ego identity idea of I'm this. And I think you come to a realization that the title, the initials don't mean anything. When I left public accounting and I went into financial services and I created my firm and became a certified financial planner, blah, 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 blah. I didn't even put CFP on my card because I came to the point where I don't care. First of all, it's not about me. It's about the people I serve. So I think the idea of dealing with identity is understanding, what do I value? What is my mission here on earth? What am I here to do? And I know right down to the last cell inside my body is I'm here to help others. Whether it's my clients, my family, the people I meet on the street, is to leave it a little bit better. And however I'm called means nothing. I had this is a good story. I had a client who was an oral surgeon, and he had to retire based on contract with his partners at a certain age. And we'd work really hard to get him ready to, what are you going to do in retirement? And what, his financial situation was great, no problem. And he loved to fish. He had grandchildren. He liked to, all these different things. 6 months later, he's in my office and we're doing a check-in, and what's going on? He goes, well, I'm working. I'm back to work, and I'm helping. I'm filling in for doctors who are on vacation or are sick and doing the surgeries.
Mhm.
I said, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, help me understand what where'd that come from? Because we never talked about the possibility of you going back to work or anything. He said, Michael, he goes, I've been a doctor all my life. I don't want to be a mister. And, that kind of like hit me between the eyes. Like, he only saw his worth
By his title. Wow.
By his title. And, I've come to the realization for me that, I don't care what initials are in front of your name, behind your name, what you call yourself, CEO, chairman, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Who are you?
Who are you in here? I think that's really where, what I've come to think about in terms of identity, the title, the job. I'm here to help people. And as a financial planner, that was my job as a father, as a spouse, as a grandparent. I'm here to help. I'm here to hopefully model good behavior. I'm here to model, like when my kids were little, I did things that were way outside my comfort zone, just for the reason of showing them that it's important. Like I ran for Board of Education and stood for election. It was terrible. I hated I loved serving. Well, I liked serving. Love is, seeing the kids in the school was amazing. Dealing with some of the parents who had their own agenda, not so much fun. But I felt it was really important to show that you give back, that your community is important. And it was so outside my comfort zone. So those were the things that I thought were really important. And that's what I do today. I volunteer. I sit with, there's an elderly man who has macular degeneration, and I go and I pay his bills, and I sit with him and I'll take him to the dentist or whatever. He's got no one. He's a widow. His daughter is out of state, and he's alone. So, it's like I do these things because I think it's important to help other people, and it's important to show my children and my grandchildren. And they know his name and they ask, so those are some of the things that, that I think are important is, what do you value? And after working for a lifetime around money and finance, money's not it. Financial security is important. It's the baseline. If we go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we must have financial security. We must be able to put our heads on the pillow and know we're okay.
Yeah.
But if we're going to progress beyond that, we need to separate out the junk. Like, I don't care what car someone drives. I don't care what watch they wear or what phone they have or all that other stuff. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Wow. Question I have is when I think about being a dad, and evidently is very important to you, which it is to me as well. And sometimes we talk a lot about the kids, and we talk about how important it is that they have a dad and they get to see dad, and dad gets to be the example. But what we don't talk about all the time is what it means to us to be a dad. And I would love for you to share how it impacted some of the decisions that you make. I see you smiling, so I see that it was important, but we make decisions differently, I think we do, as dads than we would have if we weren't. So kind of talk to me what it means to be a dad.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. My father was tough. He was a tough man.
Was he?
He was a very tough man. He was very demanding. He was a workaholic.
Even as a sixth grade teacher, he was.
Oh yeah. Because I mean, he was a sixth grade teacher. He was a musician, so he worked, Friday night, Saturday, Sundays, things like that. But he would come home. He did all the work around the house. He did all the gardening around the house. He did all the fixing around the house. He painted the house, and he was the worst at it. He was terrible, but he wasn't going to pay anyone for it because he came out of depression. So he figured it out for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And, he would paint the outside of the house. He'd be up there on the ladder, even into his early 70s, scraping and burning. And it would do like one side every year. And so by the time he finished, he'd have to start all over again. But he was tough. He was very, very demanding. He did not believe in the democracy. It was his way or no way. Gotcha. Children are to be seen and not heard. It was if you need something, I'll decide what it is that you need. Gotcha. And I listen, I understand, growing up in the Depression, and he grew up with a single parent household, that, it was all about responsibility. It was all about safety and security. There was no BS about it. There was no equivocation. This is it. This is it. And he didn't believe in sparing the rod. There were things about him that I thought were wonderful, but there were things about him that I thought was miserable. And I made the decision that when I was going to become a dad, there were things I was definitely not going to do. I never put a hand on either one of my children. But there were things that he brought that I adapted and used. So being a dad means, it's a huge and awesome responsibility, and you hope that you make the right decisions. You hope, because who knows? You can look back and say, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have said that, or gee, if I could have done that over. But you know what? I've had conversations with both my kids, and I said, and both of them are parents now. It's like, there are things that I regret doing or saying, and if I could take them back and make them and not have done them, I would do so in a minute. And I apologize for anything, because I had a bit of a temper, and they knew that I had, again, it was more my voice than or a look, especially the daughter. The look was enough to melt her. But you don't know what, and I said, as telling them as parents, there's no such thing as perfect. We just do the best we can based on what's going on in our lives at the time. The stresses, the strains, the tired, the good, the bad, and the ugly of life. And all that relates down to the parent. But coming back to love, coming back to affection, coming back to hugs, and my son, who calls almost, if not every day, almost every day, we never end a phone call without "I love you." When we see each other, we give each other kisses and hugs, and he's 39 years old, and I hope that never ever ends, and I don't think it will, because that's just who he is.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Have you been married?
Yeah, my wife and I have been together. We met in college. We were in our sophomore year of college, and we got married in 1977. Okay. We were just out of college, and we've been together since.
So tell me about being a husband then. Tell me about the joys and what you've learned over the years that have made this last, because I think that's a lot of people want to hear that, right?
You know what? I think if anyone goes into the expectation that your spouse is going to be in 100% alignment with you at all times, you're living in a fantasy.
Ooh, yes, you are.
Right? But the one of the things about my wife that's so amazing is that throughout all the transitions and changes that I've made in my life and career, she has stood by me and supported me through each one of them. Like when I decided to leave public accounting, to my father's complete shock and dismay, she was there with me, and during the lean time, she was there with me. I think it's about understanding that, we're two human beings that we were raised very differently. She grew up in Boston. She was an only child. I grew up here in New Jersey. I had siblings. We had different experiences. Her family was very different than my family. And, I learned from her. And I was just very blessed. And I can't say that, we've always been, that there hasn't been a harsh word exchange or we haven't had rough times, because we have. But we come back to that, what was the thing that attracted us to each other to begin with? What was that maybe sole purpose or that thing that brought us together?
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. It's just so neat to see somebody who can find that way because like we all know that there's rough times, but you found a way to get through it. And now every day. Now, is she retired as well? So
she is. And it's interesting because our second granddaughter, the one who lives locally, one of the ones who lives locally, she was our miracle baby. She was born at 1 pound, 7 ounces.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And she spent 97 days in the NICU. And she's absolutely perfect. And thank God. I mean, she is, we call her our miracle baby. And so my wife was so moved by this experience. And this was during COVID, that she volunteers at the NICU. So that's one of the ways that she spends her time.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, and then, I mean, because, my wife and I, we work together at the house, right? I do all the stuff I do from home. She does all the stuff. And I don't get tired of her, but people look at us and go, well, don't you get sick of seeing each other all day, every day? And I'm like, no, not really. I mean,
right. And the fact is that you might be in the same house, but you're not sitting in the same room, 24/7.
No.
So you have time to, explore each, other. And my wife's upstairs. I'm sure she's, in her nose in a book or talking to a friend or something, Yeah.
When you think of like one of the things that I try to do is I try to help people become the person that God put them on this earth to do, or, become the best that they can be. And I know you've done a lot of life coaching and a lot of helping people, in their journey to be able to become. What are like maybe the one or two things that as you're doing your coaching, they say, these are the things that if you do this, and it might not be just one single thing, but to kind of get somebody started, to be able to become that person. What are some of those things that you tell people?
So I think one of the biggest things, Brian, is helping people discern whether it's something that's coming from their head or from their heart, right? Yeah. We spend so much time in here because what goes on in our head is stuff to keep us safe.
Yeah.
Right? It's to keep us in our comfort zone. And our brain is going to tell us every time, oh, don't do that. There's a risk. Don't do that. You're going to get eaten by a tiger. Don't do this. There's dinosaurs out there. And, that's that caveman part of ourselves that still exists. Yeah. Okay. There is no tiger. Got it. So,
that's so funny you said that.
and the fact is that if we allow ourselves to feel in our body where our passion is, where our beliefs are, what we're passionate about, what we value. I coached a young African-American advisor, and he was telling me he was having difficulty in accumulating wealth for himself. And I took him through an embodiment experience where, getting him grounded, getting his feet on the ground, getting him to breathe into it. And he sat there and he held his heart. And after the conversation after, and I just sat and listened, how he had guilt feelings about his success because he grew up in such poverty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, well, what opportunities exist for you with the wealth that you accumulate to help others. So instead of pushing it away, what happens if you welcome it in? What can you turn that into?
Yeah. Wow. That's cool.
So, yeah. So, I mean, believe me, I had the chills. I sat there and I spoke, I mean, as in a typical coaching session, I talk 5% of the time and I listen 95% of the time. So cool. Just allowing him. But the thing is, and again, it's going back to this whole idea of in our brains are telling us the lies. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Our brains are really good for telling us, oh, turn left at the next block. Yeah. That's what our brains are really good for. But in terms of how we live our lives, it needs to come from our heart. Do we feel it in our gut? Do we feel it in our chest, in our throat? Where do we feel it in our body? And what is it telling us? We live in such a distracted world that if we can take away some of that distraction and focus on how we actually feel and where we feel and make that decision, is it happening north in our brain or is it happening south in our body? And what do we want to listen to? And we always want to listen to what's happening in here when it comes to our values. And I think that to me is really the crux, because we cannot succeed in anything we do. We cannot find our passion. We cannot live our values until we come from what's real for us. Mm-hmm. We can't think it through. We can't think through our passion. We can use our brain to think about linear steps, but we cannot live authentically and in alignment with our values without it being part of who we are in our bodies.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so good. Thank you. Yeah, I was joking because when I wrote There Is No Tiger, it's all about overcoming overthinking and controlling anxiety and the things that you're talking about, which is so fun and a whole bunch of cool stories that are in there. But when I think of helping people become that person and personal development, and I can tell you did spend a lot of time working on yourself, and to a level that most people won't go to. Like most financial planners won't become certified financial planners and take the biggest test, right? So how much time should people be spending, or how much on themselves, working on themselves so they can be better for others? I think the reason that you've been married so long is because you worked on you. Not just because you worked on the marriage itself, but because you became better. The reason that you've been successful in everything you've done is because you're willing to work on you. But some people don't get that, right? They think, even when you talked about the men, right? You don't talk about sports and you don't talk about, some of the other stuff because
we don't talk politics, we don't talk sports, we talk about things that are really important. We talk about things that impact our lives.
Yeah. I lost your camera, but
it's okay. I hit the wire. Sorry. It is about who we are, who we are really down to our core, and we spend so much time immersed in nonsense and things that don't matter. And when you talk about working on yourself, you got to keep asking the questions. What do I value? What is so important to me? Mm-hmm. What is my life worth? I interviewed this guy on my podcast, and I apologize because I don't remember his name, but he made it was a great piece. He said, we have a date that we're born and a date that we die. He goes, it's what happens in the dash, right?
Yeah, the dash.
He goes, it's all what happens in the dash. What does our life stand for? What did it matter that we were on this earth? Did we leave it better than we found it? Did we repair something that was broken? Were we kind? Were we caring? Did we see the world in its reality, in its ugly reality, and say, you know what, I can find something good here, or I can make something good here.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. It is so, when we don't work on ourselves and we don't spend that extra time, I've come to I don't know what your thoughts are, but I've kind of come to the realization that about 20% of my waking moments should be me working on me. If I'm going to be the person that can come from the heart, that can be what I need to be for others, then I have to work on that.
Yeah.
What you were saying, and it reminded me of that poem. Linda Ellis wrote a poem called "The Dash." I don't know if you've ever heard it.
No,
So
I haven't.
I'll just go ahead and read it because we're here. So I read a man who stood to speak at a funeral of his friend. He referred to the dates of on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of the birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said that what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and how we love and how we spent our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you'll never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?
That's awesome. I love that.
Linda Ellis. So for those of you who want to go get that and look on the internet and pop it up.
Yeah, that's it says it. It says it.
It does.
Yeah.
It does so much.
We it's so, you think about, the advertising and marketing, and everyone wants to be an influencer, and everyone, and the products and the places and the things, and all this stuff means nothing. It's all, it's all fluff, and it's, I spent a good amount of time, because I'm a little, I admit I am a little bit ADD, and I am attracted to a lot of different things that interest me. Like you asked me, like, I'm learning German, like why? I don't know. It just interested me. So, the idea of, what are those rules that you need to put in your life to say, okay, is this really something I value? I value my family. I value being kind. I value helping others. I value being creative. I value learning. And so if I say, okay, here are my 5 values, if something comes along, how does this fit in?
Yeah.
How does it align with those things that I value? So before you can do it, before you say yes to anything or start going down some rabbit hole, understand is this really something you value?
That comes back to values.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, you are the real deal. Tony Robbins says, well, at least when I went to walk on fire 20 some years ago, he says success leaves clues. And the clues that I'm getting from you are just phenomenal. I was very selfish in the questions that I asked, because it's like, how is he going to help me? And so, but I want you to be able to talk about the things you want to, or take the next 5, 6, 7 minutes, whatever it takes, to just share what we didn't talk about and what you would love to share with everybody.
I thank you, Brian. I think, we think, what keeps us from joy, from living the life that we value most? And a lot of it is fear. It's fear of not being great, or fear of other people's judgment. When I talk to the men in the Chapter X community, and I say, you've got nothing at stake here. You've already worked your life. So you want to go try and learn how to play guitar, or build furniture, or anything, there's nothing at stake. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. Right. So we need to get past our fear. In our life, we go from novice to mastery over and over and over again. From the time we're lying in the crib, we go from beginner to being able to achieve and master different skills and habits and things. And when we get to this part of our life, after our work life is over, it's like, go have fun, go make a difference, live your values, try things. If you don't like it, don't do it again. If you like it, do it again. Go experiment, test, dip your toe in. But if you don't do it because you're afraid of someone saying, what, you're learning how to paint watercolor paintings or make a vase or something, and that stops you, because you're worried about what someone else is going to say, well, that's a big mistake because you're not living your values. So I would say, don't be afraid to take risks as long as they align with your values. I could tell you over my career, I tried a lot of things that didn't work. A lot of things that didn't work. But things that I said, let's try this. Let's see how this fits in. Let's see if it fits. Let's see if it's in alignment. And try it and it didn't work. Okay, let's try something else. So I think the idea is to not be afraid. And especially any moment that you spend thinking about what someone else is thinking, you should take $10 and put it away, or give it to somebody else. Okay, take $50 out of your pocket, give it to someone else. Every time you think about what you think someone else is thinking, right? Make it hurt, because there's nothing less important or more destructive than that.
Yes.
Right. It's worse than sitting there scrolling on Instagram, because at least in Instagram you'll get a good laugh every now and then. But those are the things I think is important. It's just to test, experiment, have fun, go in with the attitude of being, remember when you were a kid. And I don't care whether you went to the park or you're walking down the street or went take a hike through the woods. You were curious. You were open. You were excited. Something new. Your senses were all on fire. And you need to allow yourself to do that again. Right? Yeah. So I think that's really the key here is if you're going to live an authentic life aligned with your values, as long as it aligns, take a risk. But also I'll give one caveat: know when to say no to something.
Oh,
right.
That's a hard one.
It is a hard one. It is a hard one. And you know what? I hated saying no. And I determined, in this period of time when I started playing again, a local community band asked me if I would play. And so I went to a rehearsal, and here I was super excited to be playing again. And I went, and the people weren't really very friendly. I didn't love the music. And I'm like, well, I came away not feeling great about it. And I'm saying, well, maybe it's me because I'm an introvert. I'm a bit of an introvert. I felt uncomfortable. So let me go back again one more time. And I went back to the next rehearsal. I felt the exact same way. And at the end of the rehearsal, I went up to the conductor and I handed him my folder. I said, sorry, this is not for me. So, knowing when to say no to something that's not aligned with your values. Because my rule in this part of my life is, if it's not joyful, I'm not doing it.
You're not doing it. Yeah. The pressure and all the kind of stuff of you're hurting somebody's feelings.
Nope.
We're just not doing it.
Nope. Yeah. Even in my firm, in my firm, if there was someone who came into my office who was rude to my employees, or whatever, I fired him. Goodbye. Don't need your money.
Wow. I am so with you. This morning I went to the bank and I had a teller that was rude. I just picked up the transaction I had. I said, I just went back and got in the other line.
Yeah.
I don't need to spend not 1 second having a conversation with you. You know, it's just, yeah, there's no, life's too short for me to spend transactions like that.
Exactly.
So, wow. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Michael. I just appreciate you. For those of you, if this is your first episode, there are so many like this that you can learn from, that you can grow from. My suggestion would be go back, rewind, pause, take notes. The things that Michael said, they're the real deal. They're the things that matter the most. And you can see somebody who's living out joy in his life. And so many of us are seeking that and wondering, what does it take to have joy? Well, you just spend an hour with somebody who showed you exactly what it takes to have joy in your life. And part of it is just not compromising for some of the things. I mean, there are times in life when you're building and you're growing and you have to go through, some of the things you don't like. But there's also times when you just go, wait a minute, I get to choose. We live in a place and a time in our history, probably the best time in the history of the world to live. And you live in a spot, if you're listening to this, you are blessed. I promise you, compared to most of the world, if you have the ability and the equipment and the tools to listen to us have this conversation, you are incredibly blessed. And if you can take advantage of it in the time that we spent together. So hit the notification button, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you on more episodes, and watching more of what we do. Michael, do you have any final closing words that we have for today?
Well, if anyone's interested in reading my blogs or listening to any of the podcasts, you can find it. Well, you can find the podcast on Spotify, whatever it's called, Chapter X with Michael K, or on the website, it's michaelfk.com, all one word. And if you want to subscribe, I'm also on Substack or whatever, and I write about life and I write about things to think about and my experiences and figuring stuff out, and I try and keep things really short because I know me, my attention span isn't that long, so I write. That's how I write.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And it's Chapter X. Is that what the
Chapter X with Michael K?
Okay.
And that is the podcast, and the website is Michael FK. F is in Frank.com. All one word.
Gotcha. So if you are transitioning and you're trying to figure out, what do I do now that I'm leaving my workforce? I would look Michael K up, michaelfk.com up, and look for Chapter X on the podcast. All right. We'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Don't forget, you are God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. And we'll talk to you guys on the next one.